Hey there. Welcome to the Pine Island Experience podcast. I'm Joanna Anderson with my husband, Trygve. Each of our episodes will be conversations with fellow Pine Islanders.
The goal of our podcast is to share with you our experiences, what we have found to be fun, and what makes the Pine Island experience so unique.
You get to go through that whole process with someone. It's really neat to see them fall in love with a home that's not theirs yet. And then all of the stages with that. And sometimes there's tears and, it's not always an easy experience. And that's where having someone like myself or one of my agents involved is a good thing because they can help you through all of those bumps. And then you get to the closing table and the hope is that all of those bumps obviously at that point have been solved. And so now you have that sigh of relief, like, hey, I'm signing this and now I get to walk into my home and do the things I want to do with it. Seeing someone's vision come alive too with that, where they're like, they might love everything about the house except for that one thing. And then you get to see them pour into that and experience, I get to put my touch on this.
You've been listening to Staci Stevens, local realtor and broker owner of Castaways Island Realty and Rentals. Staci has lived and worked on Pine Island for more than 2 decades with a deep understanding of the local market and a genuine passion for connecting people with their homes. When you listen to Staci, you'll hear her love for her family, for Pine Island, and for the community she proudly serves. And now, here's Staci. Well, Staci Stevens has joined us to our delight from Castaways Island Realty and Rentals. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for joining us. We've been looking forward to this day.
Thank you.
We always start with your background, where you grew up, where you went to school, and eventually, how did you find Pine Island? Could you fill us in on that?
Sure. So I moved to Florida on a cross-country scholarship. I'm originally from Grand Rapids, Michigan. My parents had lived in Lake Worth for 5 years at the beginning of their marriage. And so we would vacation in Florida. So when I was looking for colleges, I thought it'd be fun to be a pain to my parents and applied all over the United States at all kinds of different random places. And my mom got a phone call from Palm Beach Atlantic University in West Palm, verifying something about my identity. And she was like, my daughter's not going to Palm Beach Atlantic. And come to find out, I had applied there, had been accepted, and they were verifying something. And so she got back at me a little bit by being the smart 18-year-old that I was and said, hey, you're going to go check this college out while we're here for spring break. I wasn't a fan because I thought spring break was for hanging out on the beach. But instead, I did go check out the college. They offered me a running scholarship, much better than anywhere else. And so by the end of spring break, I was like signing the paperwork. Yeah, this is where I should go. And so went to Palm Beach Atlantic on a cross-country scholarship with the intent of never settling in Florida. I had 3 non-negotiables when I left Michigan. 1, never to become a Florida resident. 2, to not become a teacher. And 3, not get married in college. And the never say never thing was kind of thrown right back at me because I did all 3.
You did all 3? Wow.
Yeah. So I have a degree in secondary education and biology. I have a master's in special ed that I got after the first 2 children were born. Kind of never intended on being in the position I'm in currently, other than I do like real estate a lot. And so getting into that was not natural based on my education degree, but at the same time, I just say I teach people about real estate now instead.
Yeah, you're a teacher.
So Pine Island, I ended up here after the college experience. The husband I didn't plan on getting in college that I did get in college was a Pine Island native. And so after my freshman year of college, when we first met, the very end of my freshman year, he was a senior graduating, came to Pine Island with him and fell in love instantly. So on top of falling in love with him, I also fell in love with this area and knew that even though we lived in West Palm for 4 years as a married couple, the intent was always to move over here. This is definitely where both of our hearts were. It's more family friendly because we anticipated on having children at some point. So even though we lived in West Palm for a period of time, it was a lot of fun. Met a lot of really neat people, did a lot of really cool things. It was never the long-term goal. So the intent was to come over here.
And you both fell in love with it.
Yeah. So he was born and raised here. So he loved it, but in a different way at that point. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until we were married and really started thinking about having kids that he was like, I think we need to go back home. I probably would have left West Palm earlier if I had had a choice, but our business over there was doing quite well. So it was kind of that toss up between, hey, we have really good things going on here. And as a teacher, I could teach anywhere. So it didn't really matter where we were.
How'd the cross country do with, I don't know too much about that university. So how'd the competition go?
I was the only incoming freshman girl. So that was kind of weird. There were a couple boys. So it was a smaller program the year I was there. Since Craig and I were there, so he graduated prior to obviously me graduating. So it had been growing quite well. And at this point, it is quite large and growing. Like it has a huge business program, and that's where he graduated from. The education program there is phenomenal. They have a bunch of other things. So cross country there was kind of small when I was there, but I competed all over the state of Florida. Didn't go to nationals ever. It was not, I enjoyed the team aspect of it and participating in that. And I was driven, but not maybe to the same level. Like now I have a collegiate child, someone that's in school and going on a scholarship. And I think she's a little bit more driven some days than I was like, okay, I like this. I enjoy doing it, but I don't necessarily need to go to nationals.
Kind of a lonely sport, is it not? I used to help out like track. There's other people right there next to you, but typically, at least in the Midwest, that's across a golf course and you're kind of out by yourself. There's not really coaches near.
You have to be somewhat self-motivated. There is a team aspect, so you gain team sports just like track. But yeah, there is definitely a bit of self-motivation that happens with a cross-country athlete because you're not always having someone in your ear telling you what you need to do. So you do have to be somewhat self-reliant and knowing what you're supposed to do. And good coaching helps with that too, as far as, if you're alone, here's what I'm going to tell you to do. Here's the next person you're looking for. But yeah, there are times on courses where you're like, where is everybody? So I really enjoyed cross-country. I did like track better out of the two, but Palm Beach Atlantic didn't have a track team the year I was there. And they do now. So it's, again, the program's grown. I have 1 year of eligibility left. I did not run my senior year. And so I've joked with my kids that I may go back to college and join their team with them. And they get a little disgusted with me. But yeah, anytime they're like, I don't know if I want to run. I'm like, well, then I'll run with you and join your team. Oh, no, Mom, please don't do that.
They've probably seen Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield.
Yeah, exactly.
So speaking of the kids, though, how did they like Pine Island? They grew up here. Mm-hmm. Is this their dream come true to be on the island?
Yeah, they sometimes it can be a little lonely in the fact that, it's a predominantly older island. There's definitely young families on it, but if you look at the demographics, there's a lot more older people than there are younger. That has slowly been changing. So young families or families in general are important to the island, just not as far as numbers. But when you look at the things they get to do, we're blessed with property also. So they get to go, they're free range kids in every sense of the word, as far as they don't have a ton of access to electronics. I'm kind of weird about that. I'd rather them go play outside like I did as a kid. Mm-hmm. So we have cattle, we have chickens. So they're actively involved in that kind of stuff. And then just fishing, like our son is literally fishing every single day. He caught a sheephead behind our house last night with the wind howling and miserable. And he's like, look, Mom, and it was a good sized sheephead too. So they're very blessed in that aspect. And I think they know that. Our freshman in college misses home, I think, more than I ever anticipated her for some of that. She loves living where she lives. She loves the college experience. She's like, man, I really miss home on Pine Island. So I'm glad when she gets to come home. And I'm glad that that's a positive experience too. So we've been really fortunate in how our kids are growing up.
Now, it sounded like you ran businesses when you were in West Palm because you said the business was good.
Yeah.
Good. So what business was that?
So it was mainly Craig's business. I was involved more on a bookkeeping end. So I graduated with a degree, went essentially into teaching. He graduated with a business degree and went into CETO and enjoyed that. Got to experience all kinds of stuff. So the CETO range in West Palm goes from pretty much Jupiter all the way down to the edge of Miami. So he saw all kinds of stuff along the coast. And then it goes as far as almost the Bahamas. So if you got a call, and the way they used to do that is you'd have a radio in your home. Mm-hmm. And if a call came in at, 2:00 in the morning for a Mayday or whatever, that CETO would, not the Coast Guard type Mayday, but a CETO type Mayday, they would run. They had inflatable boats and they would run almost to the Bahamas. So he did some really cool things. But during that period of time, he also learned a lot. He had an extensive boat knowledge from Pine Island. He had commercial fished through high school. He used a lot of that knowledge and started a boat maintenance company. And that's a little bit different than over here. There were a lot more people that just wanted to walk onto their mega yacht or whatever and not ever do anything. So some of the packages they had were geared towards just weekly maintenance, making sure the teak looked good and running through the engines and making sure the AC worked. And then also doing transport. So they would bring boats all over. Again, Bahamas was really big, up into the seaborne areas like Nantucket and that kind of stuff. So I didn't get to ever go on a transport, which is kind of weird. I'd never worked with being a teacher. I'm like, I have all this time off, but yet the transports always fell in weird times. So I didn't get to do those, but he did some really neat things with that. It was us and we had a business partner, another husband and wife. So both of the gentlemen were kind of the people doing the day-to-day. And then she did a little bit more of the marketing. I wasn't really savvy with marketing at that point. And then I did a lot of the bookkeeping as far as just the numbers and throwing stuff into our QuickBooks account. So we ran that for 5 years and then sold to our business partner when we decided to leave. And he still is running that business. It's doing quite well. It's diversified a little bit over the years, but kind of the bones of the company are very similar to what we started over there.
So then when you moved here for the family aspect, then did you say, I'm going to get into this business gig as well?
Yes and no. So when we first moved over, I taught, wasn't planning on teaching because we were already actually expecting our first. I thought I was going to come over and just do this housekeeping thing. And I made it at like 3 weeks. And I was like, this is kind of boring, especially not having a child at home. So I put my name out for a substitution list. I subbed at a couple of the local high schools, enjoyed it, but I was realizing subbing is not my gig either. I didn't mind the not planning part and having to do the extra stuff with that, but I really didn't like coming into a classroom and not having any control. And a lot of times when you sub as a high school teacher, if it's a day, they're watching a video or something and it's kind of a free-for-all. I didn't like that part of it. So while I was subbing, a Mariner High School, where Craig actually graduated and his mom had been a teacher, called me and said, hey, we saw your resume. Would you be interested in sitting for a job? And I was like, went for the interview, really enjoyed the principal, kind of enjoyed what he was saying, but they wanted me to teach chemistry. And that is my least favorite science. Out of all of the sciences, I'm a life science person. I would much rather teach bio, marine, any of the life sciences. I am definitely more interested in. And so I said, hey, I would love and would be very interested in this as long as I don't have to teach chemistry. And he had said, I have some wiggle room within the science program. So he did hire me with the intent of moving things around. So they moved some stuff around. I also had to inform him, hey, I'm probably not going to make it through the whole year. I am pregnant. Didn't look it. So he was a little shocked. And the goal was to make it to spring break. Did not make it to spring break, but I did fill in for the rest of the year. In the meantime, Craig went and worked with his dad on the palm tree farm. So we had kind of a transitional year where we were like, okay, what's this going to look like? With the intent of probably being in some sort of business, just wasn't sure whether we were going to do marine stuff more. He really didn't enjoy palm tree farming at the time, mainly because there were enough cooks in the kitchen with that. So he did start doing some repairs on his own and kind of building that business. But we realized the model we had in West Palm really didn't work Pine Island. It's just not the same clientele. And there were a handful of people that were interested, but not something you could build a business on. So that when the marina type situation opened up, that was definitely more something where his skill set made sense. And so that was that transition where that opened up. We had a 9-month-old at the time when we signed paperwork, and that kind of moved in that direction. So I didn't renew my contract that year with the assumption of staying home, but staying home really ended up being staying at the marina. And that's okay. It worked out. It was just kind of a funny, you never know what you're going to end up on that aspect.
So then when did you start Castaway?
Castaways, I sat and did real estate. The funny thing is, even when I taught in West Palm, I taught in a very affluent school my first 3 years. And the teacher I taught with had this tendency to, during rest time with our small people, we had to kind of stay quiet. And so she would say, hey, let's see where so-and-so lives. So we would plug in addresses because, again, just like Lee County, Palm Beach County had an open information as far as your properties. So you could plug in either a name or an address and see what would pop up. So we did that all the time, just looking to see who lived where and who owned and who didn't. And it was kind of a neat thing and kind of, I would have to say, my segue into looking random stuff up. So I continued to do that even over here where I'm like, oh, what about this? I would pull up information and look at it. And so Craig had said, hey, I think you'd be really good at real estate. When we bought the marina, Castaways was in the front office. So if you look at the old pictures, Castaways is the front office of the marina. Then there was the marina middle section. So the door you actually walk into, like off the ramp area, it was really little. And then there was an apartment. And before us, there was a gentleman that lived in the apartment, ran the marina, and then Castaways was a separate entity. We didn't keep him on. Realized the apartment was great for us as far as a small family, but then we kind of sort of started renovating. Decided we didn't want to keep that long term because we didn't want to ever live there. It was great for nap time and those types of things. Castaways was there, I don't even know how many years it was technically there. So we already kind of had a relationship in some aspect with Castaways. Castaways moved across the street to where Jackie's was. It was a little restaurant early on in the early 2010s. And then I don't even remember when we moved into the other building, but it went through 2 different brokers in that period of time, just kind of based on aging out or saying, hey, I want to do something different. So there was always that little bit of, hey, you should, check Castaways out. And we did a lot of cross marketing anyways, where we'd say, hey, if you need a rental house here, go here. So I was already sending people there. I'm like, why am I not using my resources? I can probably sit for real estate. So went and sat for real estate, just a regular course, really enjoyed it. And then joined the Castaways team and realized I would probably eventually want my broker's license just because I like the continuing ed, whether I did anything with it or not. So did my broker license, and things just kind of fell in line where Sandy, who was the broker, said, I'm not sure I want to be the broker any longer. And so we kind of just flipped positions essentially. So I became the broker. She became a broker's agent. And so now we still work in a lot of the same aspects. I'm just, at this point, the more responsible party as far as if something goes really wrong. Now she gets to point at me instead of say, oh, I have to deal with that. So it was kind of a natural transition from one thing to the next.
What would you think somebody would be surprised about juggling family life and family businesses?
I think the hardest thing is being married in that situation. So family life, as far as the kids, it can be really busy. And sometimes I'm sure my clients think, they're maybe getting second. I'm sure sometimes my kids think that too, where they're like, well, mom had to do this or that. But for the most part, it does run relatively seamless on the kids and business aspect, where you can kind of schedule all of those, other than making sure someone's at the marina or someone's at the real estate office on the days that I'm not there. A lot of it you can do. We're very digital at this point. So you can do some of that stuff and say, hey, can I send you this or can I do this? Even on the fly. It doesn't have to be in an office setting anymore. So that probably is way better now than maybe years previous. I would say the hardest thing is being in a business with a spouse and remembering that there's spouse versus business partner or, business situation. We try to go out to dinner sometimes and say, hey, we're not going to talk about any business. But when your life literally is businesses, it's really hard to separate that. So I would say that's probably the biggest conflict where I'm like, oh, there are some days it'd be really nice to be a teacher again and leave that at, and not that as a teacher, you take it home still, but there's definitely more of a separation as far as your day-to-day, not being in a business relationship with your spouse.
How would you describe real estate on the island? You mentioned it's a little bit different demographic, although that's slightly changing. And I know probably your basis was your first snooping over on the east side of the state, but foots right into what do you tell people when they're thinking about acquiring real estate on Pine Island?
So I've gotten a lot of calls lately with people that have no idea about Pine Island, and that kind of freaks me out a little sometimes because it's hard to, unless you've been to Pine Island, it's very hard to say, you can tell people what it's like, but until they've been here, it's really hard to know what the day-to-day is like. The demographic has changed when we were part of the Methodist Church, we did a whole demographic study probably 10 years ago. And I was shocked even then at how much that number is pulling down into the 50s and 40s. Whereas if you look 20 some years ago, vast majority of people were 70s, 80s, and 90s. So that has changed. Obviously, some of the storms have changed that demographic too. But I think it was kind of already happening to some extent. It wasn't solely a storm that did that. If you look at Pine Island 25 years ago, when I'm first kind of getting introduced, the Cherry Estates and those types of places were very seasonal. Not that we're not now, but by seasonal, I mean they came in January from Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, all those northern states, opened up their place, stayed until March, sometimes April, based on, we always say tax season or Easter, one of the two, and then literally closed it up and didn't touch it again until they came back in January. That's not necessarily the truth anymore, especially with owners. We're seeing more, hey, we'll come in November maybe, open things up, go back for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and then really come down in January. But they're around a little bit more. So instead of it being a 3-month, with that being said, they didn't really necessarily care, and I'm using that word lightly, about what their place necessarily looked like. They wanted the set it and forget it, not necessarily invest a ton of money into it, something that kind of like the cottage feel up north, where you have a cottage on the lake and you literally close it and you don't see it again because of winter. So you don't put your most fancy things in it. It's just kind of a comfortable residence. That is definitely changing too, where we see a lot more people spending money on their residence and using it throughout more of the year. So that has definitely changed. I would say in the last 15 years, we're seeing way more of that, where people are utilizing their homes maybe 6 months out of the year versus a solid 3. And, that 3 was open on the 1st and leave at the end of the month in March and not come down at all.
So I guess, especially for renters and potentially even new property owners, what do you think they underestimate or don't understand about Pine Island? They've made the commitment, they've spent money, and then there's kind of that aha moment, I guess, regardless of where you go. What are the kind of those moments here, do you think?
So if they don't fish or have a water life, aha of what do I do on Pine Island is kind of the thing. So that one, and in the last 10 years, I would say the influx of our Spanish population that are coming to buy or rent, they're like, what do I do after 9 o'clock? Because you do have some sort of cultural difference there where they're like at 9 o'clock, they're getting dressed and going out, like eating dinner. And they're like, where do I go? And I'm like, and the list is pretty short after 9 o'clock at night locally. Most of our places are closing down, but there's not enough people that are desiring that, I think, still at this point to make that change happen. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a catch-22 where they're like, where do we go? So I think there have been some buyers that are like, wait a minute, what do I do? So if they don't fish, I think that is a problem, or have some sort of water type expectation. If you are those things, if you're a fisherman or fisherwoman and out on the water or go boating during the day, I think this is the perfect location. And even if you don't do that all the time, there has to be some sort of draw for that, I think, in order to live here, just because there isn't a huge nightlife. There's not maybe within the small communities, like neighbors getting together, but realistically, you don't see that in bars and restaurants. Even Matlacha, Bokeelia, it doesn't matter really on Pine Island in general. There's not a huge draw for that. I kind of like that part. And I think I would say most of the people on the island probably respect that and think that is perfect. But again, there's that small population of people, or they're trying to rent their place out and are like, here's all the things to do. Well, the renter is like, wait a minute, this all is done at 9 o'clock. Yep, it's pretty much done at 9 o'clock. And again, there's a handful of places that don't meet that criteria, but it's a handful, not here's all of your options. You have a plethora.
What's the best part of helping somebody acquire property on Pine Island in your experience?
Well, I mean, it's a huge monetary experience. So for the most part, so you get to go through that whole process with someone. It's really neat to see them fall in love with a home that's not theirs yet. and then all of the stages with that. And sometimes there's tears and, like it's not always an easy experience. And that's where having someone like myself or one of my agents involved is a good thing because they can help you through all of those bumps. And then you get to the closing table and the hope is that all of those bumps obviously at that point have been solved. And so now you have that sigh of relief, like, hey, I'm signing this and now I get to walk into my home and do the things I want to do with it. Seeing someone's vision come alive too with that, where they're like, they might love everything about the house except for that one thing. And then you get to see them pour into that and experience, I get to put my touch on this and pour into that home. There's also the other side of that, the selling aspect that can be super emotional too. And I think that has been a harder thing in the last couple years because there are people that are selling that may not want to sell quite yet. Again, age might be part of it, family obligations, and just changes in general. So sometimes it's kind of more of a sad experience. And I've told probably a handful of people in the last year and a half, I'm like, just because you sell now doesn't mean you can't come back. And that's kind of a neat thing too, where they're like, you're right, I don't need this home right now here. It might be a second or third home. And they're like, I can't do this based on grandbabies or marriages and stuff happening. That doesn't mean that door closes forever. And we have seen that over the years where somebody takes a break from our local area for 5-6 years because of what's going on. And they're like coming back 5 years later going, now I get to buy. And sometimes it's a bigger house and sometimes it's a smaller house based on their needs at that time. So yeah, that's always a really cool experience to see someone that falls in love with Pine Island that is able to, after a period of time, come back if that's their desire. So
and you get to see them come back.
Yeah. Yeah, they'll come back. My agents and I have sold places to people that have been back in, maybe 2 times even where they sold one and then realize, hey, I'm going to retire now. We see that more with people that have inherited a home. So they may inherit something and they're like, the timing is just not right with this. So they sell it. But again, in the back of their mind is like, I would really like to live on Pine Island again. 5-6 years later, they're coming in and saying, okay, we have 10 years of expectation based on what our kids are doing, graduating college or whatever. They're going to go do their thing. We want a place to bring the grandkids down. And then maybe 10-15 years later, they're going, okay, we want to transition to a smaller place or a different place. So yeah, we have seen it where they may have to take a break for a little bit, but I feel like once you have Pine Island under your skin, it's really hard to ever find that Pine Island feel anywhere else.
What would you say differentiates Castaway and your team from the other agencies?
We've been here for quite a while, but other agencies have also been. But ours is I call it a boutique experience in the fact, and some places boutique is a weird word, but it's a smaller family experience. I know all of my agents. I know there's other groups out there that know inside their own agency, they know people, but they're part of a broader group. And so we don't have that. So with our small group, I know what's going on in their lives and they know what's going on in my life. So it's kind of more of a family experience. If there's something I can't do at that moment, I can always rely on my team. I can say, hey, I need you to, can somebody go open this door? And almost without fail, we can work really well as a team together on that. So that's really neat. And I'm sure other agencies have some of that. But realistically, being that smaller hometown and with the people I have on my team, they have so many years of experience specifically on this island, not just in real estate, but in other businesses too. So there's a nice broad feel for what they know and what they've done. I am nervous about losing any of my agents to anything because of that. The extent of the history we have is just phenomenal. When you look at it, I'm like, man. And there are things I ask them, especially Sandy and Neil, that I'm like, hey, have you ever seen this before? And they can tell me a great story about this and this, applicable, and know all the history on that piece of property without even me pulling anything up. Like they know it almost intimately. This is who owned it. This is what happened. And that knowledge you cannot replicate.
Now you've sold and found a lot of homes for people and helped them sell homes and rentals. Mm-hmm. Do you have a favorite story you can share?
Oh, favorite.
Probably have lots.
But I do. I sold a house for a customer at the marina. That was really, and then that kind of was where my start really happened with real estate. Real estate's not one of the easiest things. It's easy to I think it's easy to take the test and get that part done. It's harder to build that clientele. And with new agents, that's the hardest part. The marina kind of filled that void for me as far as I had instant clients, essentially. Now, they may not have come to me immediately, but I at least had a base of people that I could say, hey, if you ever want to, here I am. But we had a customer that was very wealthy, didn't ever live that wealthy. I mean, he had a very nice house, but if you saw him on the street, you would never guess. And so we were selling his house, or I was selling his house, and the first client that came in, the wife was German. She came in with these really high stiletto heels on, and I had to be present for all of the showings. So I'm like, oh, they don't really look Pine Island. But again, I try not to judge because Pine Island doesn't have that look. So I was like, huh. And so she's walking through the house, and you can tell she's very uncomfortable because she's not dressed for this. But in her mind, I'm sure she was dressed perfectly. They had two smaller children. So I was kind of doing the mom thing too, where I was like, oh my gosh, it was not a house necessarily perfect for small children just to be left on their own. The owners had their grandchildren there, and they knew the house, but just exploring. So the mom and me was kind of like, oh. So the wife's first question after they kind of walked through the house to the other agent, she wasn't asking me. She goes, so where is the mall? And I was like, huh? And the other agent tried to recover. And then she looked at me and she goes, no, I'm being serious. Where is the mall? And I was like, like an hour away? Like how do you... And she just got this look of disgust. And the husband was trying to fix it because he loved the house. But I realized really quick, this was not going to go well. And they had already put in a verbal offer. So it's kind of one of those this is not going to happen. So I did. I got off the phone I got off the showing, called my people, and they're super excited. How did it go? I was like, well, it's a good offer, but I don't think it's going to make it to the table. So that was our first experience with a buyer in that home. So then when we did finally get an offer, everything's moving along. These buyers are the perfect people for the house, but we nickeled and dimed over a golf cart. And I thought it was the funniest thing because both groups could have easily just gone and bought a brand new golf cart for the dollar amount we were talking. But realistically, they both wanted the golf cart. And I was like, oh my goodness. So me and the other agent are both like, okay, we'll buy you a golf cart, whoever, one side or the other. And both groups still dug their feet in. And I was like, we're going to lose this whole deal on a golf cart. And it was just kind of funny. And it wasn't even that great of a golf cart. That was the best part. It was just a crappy old golf cart. So you never know what you're going to experience. And I kind of try to teach my agents, as I have some newer agents, you never know what you're going to experience in real estate. Every day it's different. You can plan 100% of everything and it will not go the way you expect it to. And it's not done until it's literally done. In the closing room, signatures, up until that, anything could happen.
No wink, no deal.
Yeah. Don't count any money until you can literally see that money at the closing table.
So enough people are interested in Castaway and the services. How best do they get a hold of you? Social media, phone numbers, websites, etc.?
So Castaways Realty is our website. You can shop homes on there. You can shop agents, essentially. We have the list of people that are inside. And we all have unique talents and histories. So I would love to say I'm the best agent there, but I'm really not. My team is by far, we comprise a very good group, but there may be things about me that you don't want. Whereas on my team, you might go, oh, that aligns more with what my history and what interests me. So utilizing that information is always good. And I've even said, even after meeting someone, if you don't think we're a good fit, I'll find someone on my team that would be better suited, because I'd rather make that customer happy than to just trudge through and have them go, I really don't like this girl, Staci. I'd rather find somebody that can meet those needs. So they can shop that. They can also shop rentals. So we do have rentals on there. If somebody bought a house, in fact, I had a call right before I left. They just bought something, said, hey, I think I want to rent my place out. And so I kind of went through the spiel on that. And I said, hey, I need to get in there. So he gave me information. I can go look at it and get his place rented. With rentals, I would say if you do buy something, the sooner you can get on the market as far as rentals, because rentals book out locally almost a year in advance. So like next year, I'm already looking at like certain homes I know are booked because we really do cater to our repeat customers. I want to make sure the person that's been here for 10 years still gets that opportunity to come back and not raise the price so much that they can't afford it, but also the newer customer might not be that much better. You know what I mean? Like I'd rather have that relationship and know who's coming in. And I tell my owners that on a regular basis. It's almost better to keep that relationship because every once in a while an owner will say, what do you think if we raise it, this, and this? Maybe we'll get a whole new group of people. And I'm like, but you have a good deal here. Don't change that out for something that shinier or looks better. My repeat customers are our bread and butter, and I really enjoy them. I like knowing who's going to be there, what to expect. So right now, I do have some new rentals coming in that will help establish that for next year, but we do give priority to our current. That doesn't mean that I can't, take new renters in. There's always a shuffle. So getting your name on that list or knowing what kind of property you're looking for so that we can start finding that property is almost a year out. That's not true about our summer schedule. Our summer schedule is kind of more in flux, but because of the demand during season, it's almost a year out thinking ahead. So Castaways Realty, we are on Facebook. Same thing, Castaways Island. We are on Instagram. Again, that's more of the pictures and stuff, but you can kind of see what's going on, what's new, what's gone pending, just some of the trends. Or technically on LinkedIn. I don't do a great job with that necessarily. It's not my favorite. And then I have an agent that just started doing some more of the like TikTok stuff. I'm not necessarily great at TikTok. So we are diversifying a little bit more into those types of things based on a younger group of agents that are more, they understand that stuff better. So they're moving into that direction. But realistically, a phone call is always an option too. We have office hours or somebody almost always will answer the phone anytime from like 7:00 until probably 8:00 at night, realistically. So if a renter has a problem or questions, they can usually get a hold of an agent almost every single day. So that's also nice.
On your website, you have that beautiful newsletter. I was so impressed with that because it isn't just the same newsletter. You talk about things happening on the island. You talk tips on maintaining your home, tips on selling. You even tell them about the market and tell them, how many houses sold, how many.
And we're looking to put a calendar on our website too for upcoming events. And we just did our Flamingo event. That was just kind of a local. It was fun. We're planning on doing that annually. And that brings in some of the local businesses that may not everybody knows about. Some of them are more real estate specific. Some are not. And we're calling those our friends of the flock. And we're trying to incorporate them more on a monthly and daily basis. So we have some events planned over the next year that we're going to include them in and include the community in.
Sounds like a great success.
It's fun.
Well, thank you so much. This was wonderful.
Well,
Glad I got to meet you in person.
I know
Trig knew you.
Yes.
But of course, for a number of reasons with the boat and everything. But
yeah.
Thanks so much.
No,
we enjoyed this.
Awesome. I appreciate it.
We hope you enjoyed our Pine Island Experience podcast. If you have any ideas for us, people to interview, or any comments, please feel free to email them to us at pineislandexperience@gmail.com. That's pineislandexperience, all one word, @gmail.com. Don't forget to like us, and you may subscribe to this podcast using all the major catchers like Apple iTunes, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. Thanks again for listening, and remember, island life is a constant vacation. We'll see you on the next podcast.